Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Duraldi. And today we're going to be getting into Beat the Waiver Wire. First guy we're going to talk about is Brashard Smith. So obviously I am a huge fan of this call because I was a big Brashard Smith fan in the preseason. I think it's only a matter of time here before we see Brashard Smith start to get more and more playing time. Pacheco and Kareem Hunt don't look great. The running game not getting going hardly at all. They're not that involved in the passing game either, which is kind of Brashard Smith's calling card. So I just think that there's a situation where we could be looking by week 10 when they go on their bye as a guy that could start to really kind of take over the backfield. So I really hope that this ends up coming to fruition, that we start seeing him play a little bit more over the next few weeks. You can see his snap percentage is still not really catching up here, only 11%, but it's something where we believe in the player and we're looking at the guys in front of him thinking this can only go on for so long.
Yeah, Hunt and Pacheco are kind of the opposite of explosive at this point. I'll give you three numbers, 4, 3, 9. So we know this guy can fly. He's a converted wide receiver. Definitely will add a level of explosion to this offense. Wouldn't expect him to take over Hunt's role on like the goal line by any means, but this is someone that, you and I have been very excited about. And it was funny looking back toward our bold predictions episode. You had Isaiah Pacheco finishing outside of the top 36, and we didn't tell each other our predictions going into it, but I had Pacheco as a guy that would be a constant on the waiver wire. So I think we're kind of seeing that come to fruition. And unlike last year with the Chiefs, where they finished 15-2, just playing super boring football, they are staring 1-3 right in the face. I guess, against Baltimore this week, that is a very realistic possibility. And it's actually kind of hilarious that one of those teams is going to be 1-3. So they're not going to be able to get away with what they did last year, especially with how well the Chargers are playing atop that division. So I do think, eventually we will see him get worked in more and more, and hopefully that's sooner than later.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's going to be them that's 1-3. Now, obviously, I've said that Baltimore's going to win every week, but yeah, I just don't think their offense is going to be able to keep up.
One of my guys, Woody Marks. So we see an 11% snap share week 1, 27% week 2, and up to 48% week 3. And I think the promising signs with him are we saw Damian Pierce was a healthy scratch. Dari Ogunbowale played 0% of the snaps this week. And, Marks is definitely a pass catching specialist, but I will say with him, he also led his team in rush attempts all 5 years of college. So we're looking at someone that has the potential to handle all 3 downs. Now, I am a Marks apologist being a USC fan. I always thought he looked really good, but looking over his 5-year career spanning USC and Mississippi State, he's averaged 5 yards per carry. So this is just someone that I think maybe we fall too much in love with, his specialty of being a pass catcher. He's had seasons where he's over like 80 catches, which is absolutely insane. But the issue with him, I will say, is their offensive line is definitely a mess. This team looks kind of like a disaster. So he's not some sort of like league winner, like maybe a Cam Scatterbu was, making an appearance on an episode like this a couple weeks ago. But they do have a bye in week 6. So I would say only pick him up if you can afford to hold him through them, assuming you're not starting him the next couple of weeks. But these are the type of guys that we like to look for in this episode, just seeing a week over week role increase.
Yeah, and something that'll be interesting to see here is if Joe Mixon is going to be back or doing anything by week 7, right? We have no news on him at all. So, that's the other thing here is that, I do expect Marks to continue to expand his role. Obviously took over completely on passing downs, but I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that he got 6 carries to Chubb's 9 this past week. I think he's going to continue to see that grow as we get closer and closer towards that bye. And then we know how rookies perform coming out of buys that have increasing roles. It's just they can be unleashed. So I like the call of holding him through the bye. Next guy up is Tyjae Spears, and this one is obviously an injury, but you see him down at 34%. If he was on the field, that would not be the case. It would be significantly higher than that. So I wanted to put him on here because after this week, there's a chance that he's back. He had a high ankle sprain early in the offseason, and it was kind of a race to get ready for week 1, and then they just ended up putting him on IR. So I do expect that he's going to be back when first eligible. And this is somebody that we know is, a pretty explosive player, good pass catcher. And Tony Pollard's been getting all of the work. So I can't imagine that they want to continue that usage. So Maybe he's not worked all the way back into his role in week 4, but I do think, or I'm sorry, in week 5, but I do think that this is somebody that is going to be worth owning as we move further in the season.
Yeah, and it is interesting too with Tennessee. We're seeing Coach Callahan give up the play calling duties. We know that Cam Ward has had a very tough schedule to start the year too, but I think importantly too, we have a long track record with Tony Pollard of being a much better running back when he's not the only game in town. So I think this will do wonders for Tennessee overall, and I think he's definitely worth putting him in your IR spot for now because it doesn't cost you anything. Although those spots are starting to fill up a little bit.
Yeah, geez, so many injuries.
So next guy up is Sterling Shepard, and I'll kind of bucket these next 2 wide receivers together. So Sterling Shepard is more of the veteran. So, we know Evans is going to miss 3 to 4 weeks. Unfortunately, the likelihood of re-injury is pretty high at his age and given his history. We are going to see, hopefully, Chris Godwin back this week. We'll see how involved he is and kind of what he looks like. But Shepard's, not necessarily someone I'm super excited about, but he has drawn 15 targets through 3 weeks. He wasn't all that productive last season when we saw his role increase when Evans and Godwin were injured, but he still saw a decent amount of targets. And we know, I guess, going back to Oklahoma, he and Baker Mayfield do have an established rapport. But flipping over to maybe the more exciting rookie and definitely a much deeper league stash is Tez Johnson. So if Sterling Shepard is kind of the boring pickup, this is the fun one. He's led Oregon in receptions the last 2 seasons. He ended up falling to the 7th round because he had about as bad of a combine as you can imagine. Maybe he and Isaiah Bond can kind of duke it out for that title, but he ended up running a 4.51 and weighed in at like 154 pounds, which is just completely awful. But he ends up getting scooped up in the 7th round by Tampa Bay. But this is a guy, when you watch Oregon or you turn on the highlights or the tape, whatever, he's definitely much more talented than his draft position. This is just definitely a size thing. He's someone that I've texted our college football group chat many times and saying he kind of reminds me of Garrett Wilson when he's making cuts, but we'll see. He did get a 29% snap share that last week. He still doesn't have a catch, but at least, if we do see a role increase and maybe Godwin is inactive or slower to start, we know that Baker isn't shy about targeting young players when they're open. He's not as much of an earn your stripes type guy. So again, super deep league stash, definitely a very talented player, but can end up being a cut very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another Tampa Bay pass catcher, right? K. Otten might get more involved since it is going to be, no Evans. Egbuka, I would guess, is going to play Evans' role, and Godwin is going to step back into that slot position.
Yeah, and I thought about Otten too. And, last season we saw him have like multiple double-digit target games. I just think right now they're using him on the field so much as a blocker because their O-line has been so banged up. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant on him. But you're right. I mean, we saw last season him just get peppered with targets.
Yeah, especially when they were dealing with injuries, which is the case now. So, and if Wirfs isn't back, I agree with you. But as soon as Wirfs is back, there's the potential there for Kate Otten to be something as well. Next guy up is Jalen Coker. So this is another injured reserve guy that's likely to be coming back in week 5. So again, the Panthers, they looked pretty good last week when they were blowing out the Falcons. But I think overall they can use the help on offense in the passing game. It's really just been Ted McMillan and nobody else. So I think Coker could be a nice complement opposite him. Leggett hasn't done anything, which has kind of been a little bit surprising, but they really liked Coker last year. He can work down the field. He can work in the slot. And so I think this is going to be somebody that's going to be a big part of the Panthers offense moving forward. So somebody that, if you have the spot, again, 13% rostered, pretty low rostership percentage, you can throw on your end of your bench.
Yeah, the door is wide open for Coker to be the number 2. Not only has Leggett been the most inefficient wide receiver in maybe the history of the NFL, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. JT Sanders is dealing with a high ankle sprain. And, this was a guy that we saw last season kind of get a little bit of a cult following. We know he was a UDFA, but not for play reasons. He kind of just had some injuries he was dealing with, and the fact that he played at Holy Cross. But he's a good route runner. He can get open. Like you mentioned, he can play all over the field. So I think this is someone that I would actually prioritize if you do have the space here. Next guy up is Tory Horton. So this one's a little bit difficult because we are recording this Thursday morning, and they do play on Thursday Night Football. This is someone that, let's say Charbonnet is inactive this week, which doesn't look likely. I would absolutely pick up Horton after moving Sharbs into the IR spot. But Tory Horton is just someone that I just think is a really good, talented young football player. And for deep league stashes, that's exactly who I'm trying to take advantage of. So with Horton, we've seen 3 touchdowns through 3 weeks, obviously including that awesome punt return. And he was playing like 70% of the snaps before they pulled their starters in that blowout last week. Like he and JSN, I think, ended up both having like a 50% snap share. So he's playing with the starters. Now, Seattle does run 3 wide receiver sets at the lowest rate in the league, which is an opposite 180 from what they were doing last year under Ryan Grubb. But I will say with him, as much as I hate to bring it up, it's not like Cooper Kupp has been fully healthy throughout full seasons the last few years. So I think he's someone where if Kupp was to miss time, he's going to have a ton of value, and he's just a very good football player.
Yeah, awesome player, and the role I think is definitely something. I'm glad you mentioned the Kupp injuries because he has not been healthy throughout the last few years, right? And we see he already has this role where he's scored twice. It's like, okay, so this isn't just somebody that's an afterthought. This is somebody that's actually an active part of the offense with Kupp there. And if there wasn't Kupp, he's clearly the number 2, and I think that could be a super valuable role here on Seattle. Next guy up is Jaylin Lane. So this was definitely more of your pick than mine, but I do think it's an interesting call because, Daniels should be back, and we saw him get 52% snap share in week 2 against Green Bay, but that did go back down to 24 snap share. The obvious reason he's on here is because of the Terry McLaurin injury. He has a sports hernia. They thought it was a quad injury, and he went in for imaging, and they found out it was a sports hernia. So if he's going to be out, this is somebody that I think is going to have to step up if they're going to be able to make any sort of noise basically on offense, right? I mean, obviously they have Debo and they have Ertz, but this is going to be somebody that's likely to play outside, likely to take the majority of those targets. And so I think he's worth taking a shot on, assuming Terry McLaurin's out.
Yeah, that's really the reason I added him here. And, I like him as a player, not to the level I like Tory Horton, for example, but, we've seen him show his speed, right? He had that 90-yard punt return touchdown. He's a 4.34 guy. But again, this is just more of a tryout type situation where if he does well in McLaurin's, perceived absence, then as the year goes on, he can probably carve out a bigger role in this offense.
Yeah, and I like this call too because it's a shout out to our 14 team listeners, right? This guy is going to be available, so if you get the shot going into this week, take a shot here. I think it's worth it with the role specifically, right? Because that's really what we're looking for in these videos is guys that can step into roles and potentially be something that they haven't been yet, this is the perfect example of something like that.
Another deep league guy here, Oronde Gadsden of the Chargers. So he was absolutely dominating throughout training camp. And then we see he doesn't play the first 2 weeks. Then week 3, we see him have a 26% snap share, but he had a 40% target per route run rate. He saw 7 targets, caught 5 of them, had 46 yards, and they barely missed on a corner of the end zone touchdown, or we'd probably be seeing more hype from him this week. And I think what we've seen from the Chargers, especially this season, is Greg Roman is playing to the strengths of his offense, right? Like we're seeing a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Now you insert this super athletic tight end, you're going to spread it around. And I think, for Najee Harris going down and for Omarion Hampton does better in those type of situations anyway, where he has larger lanes, he's more explosive, whereas, Najee's kind of more of that fullback type grinder guy. But Harbaugh has been hyping this guy up this week. He said he's earning more playing time. So this is a team that has the highest pass rate over expectation. And if you're in a deep league and tight end is boring and you want to just attack a athletic tight end that's going to be gaining playing time with attached to Justin Herbert, I think you can do a lot worse than Gadsden.
Yeah, and I mean, you see the 26% share, and he still managed to get 7 targets. I'm not sure how that happened, but, if that's going to be something where he can get on the field even for 50% of the snaps, ish type of role moving forward, and he can still pull 5 to 7 targets, that's going to be a very valuable player. So definitely you want to take a shot here if you need tight end help. If you missed on Juwan Johnson and Hunter Henry and those type of tight ends and you're looking for somebody still, definitely go and get Gadsden on your team. All right, and we're kicking off the defenses now. So we got the Kansas City Chiefs going up against Jacksonville in week 5. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Trevor Lawrence has been brutal to start the year despite good matchups, and Kansas City is not a good matchup for quarterbacks. So, I expect Kansas City's defense to play really well against him. I mean, he's not doing well under pressure. Trevor Lawrence, that isn't doing well under pressure. He's less than 60% completion percentage from clean pocket. So it's just like, okay, so even when they don't get to him, I don't expect him to have that good of a game. So I think this is a good call against Jacksonville in week 5.
Yeah, you opened up our quarterback rankings in May or June, whenever we first did them, with Trevor Lawrence's QB 29, and you eventually got bullied into moving him into the lower 20s, but I think maybe that was probably a better call to start things off. And I just think, Spagnuolo, we see him dial up his defense when he needs to, and I think he has all the tape he needs on Lawrence, and doesn't sound like we're going to get more Travis Hunter in this offense. And if BTJ, whatever's going on with him, doesn't get clicked, and he's probably going to be shadowed as well, it could be a tough day at the office.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to get McDuffie in this matchup, and so it's just like, as bad as he's been playing, on top of the fact that he's going to get an absolute brutal matchup here, I just can't imagine that's something where Jacksonville's going to like break out on offense for week 5. So, if they didn't do it against super easy opponents, I can't imagine they're going to get it rolling against the Chiefs.
All right, next defense up, New York Giants. Again, we've kind of stuck with the theme of targeting the New Orleans Saints. We know that the Giants have a very strong defensive front, and we know that the Saints are not going to score a lot of touchdowns. So assuming they can kind of get up after the quarterback and hold them to, 14 or 17 points, this kind of just seems like one of those that you want to target, a lower over-under scoring type of game.
Yeah, and this is a defense that's widely available too. So again, another shout out to our Deep League listeners, right, where this is somebody that's for sure going to be available in your leagues. So again, target that Saints offense. I mean, they did play okay the last 2 weeks, I will say. Yeah. I mean, they've been looking okay. So we might have to start rethinking this target the Saints thing, especially if they ever get the passing game and the running game going in the same game. We saw that a little bit in week 2, but they might have sneaky point total upside. So the Giants aren't that good on defense. So maybe we'll have to roll that back if they have a good week. But I think for now, we're still going to continue to target the Saints. And then the last defense that we're going to talk about here is the Arizona Cardinals. They get Seattle this week, but they get Tennessee in week 5, another defense where we're just targeting the Tennessee Titans. So maybe we'll see a little bit more creativity from Tennessee this week, but we're not going to be counting on that in terms of this for Beat the Waiver Wire. We're definitely still going to be attacking them as a defense with defenses. So the Arizona Cardinals definitely recommend for week 5.
Yeah, Cam Ward's been sacked 15 times, which leads the NFL 3 clear of second place. So again, we'll be targeting them for the time being.
All right. And with that, thank you so much for listening. We look forward to talking to you the next one.
Later.